Common foreigners in Lithuania, 3 general group stereotypes. Okay.
Why did you come to Lithuania? That's a very, very common question for foreigners. I don't think that question is as common for migrants to the UK or France or Germany, but Lithuanians, and even fellow foreigners, tend to be curious about how people end up choosing Lithuania out of all the other places around the world. Having been asked this question a few times myself, and then asking it myself many times as well, I've noticed a few common answers. Answers that I feel like could almost be stereotypes at this point. While stereotypes can be harmful and unhelpful, they are sometimes a broadly accurate reflection of a particular situation. After all, the textbook definition of stereotype is a widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. And so, in today's video, I thought it might be interesting to look at some of the stereotypes I've observed among foreigners in Lithuania. Is it oversimplified?
Vilnius?
Definitely. Will there be people who fit outside these categories? For sure. But will there also be many people who match these stereotypes quite precisely? Well, I'm pretty sure of it, so let's get started. Maybe we should start with the biggest category and perhaps the most amusing category, the foreigners who end up here in the name of love. From my own experiences, most people in this category are heterosexual males who have met Lithuanian women, guys that are somewhere between 35 and 50 years old, and most often they're coming from other parts of Europe, but also the US and from Canada and the UK. Those in this group typically meet their Lithuanian partners abroad, outside of Lithuania, perhaps in their home country, and they're eventually convinced to migrate to Lithuania. This might be due to skyrocketing costs of living in the other country, or the mysterious and wonderful appeal of Lithuania. Now again, this is just a stereotype. I mean, I've already observed variations and deviations from this norm. Sometimes, but far less often, it's a foreign female coming to Lithuania to settle with a Lithuanian guy. Additionally, people can migrate for family reasons and be from non-Western countries, whether it be India or countries in Africa or elsewhere. My big deviation from the stereotype is that I met my Lithuanian wife here in Lithuania, and I came as a tourist, and I pretty much just stuck around. Still, it's just too funny meeting guys from the US or Canada who live here, because I think 95% of the time, the answer for why they're in Lithuania is that they have a Lithuanian wife. Moving on, the international student is another common foreigner you'll come across in Lithuania. These foreigners are often younger and between the ages of 20 and 28, and I think they would subdivide into 2 categories. Number 1, international students from outside the EU, and 2, international students from within the EU. I don't think one big trend emerges when it comes to the gender of international students, because I've met many male and female international students in the 3 years I've lived in Vilnius. That is to say, nothing stands out one way or the other. But I would say that students from outside the EU are most often from sub-Saharan Africa, India, and Turkey. I think to a lesser extent, there are also quite a few international students from Morocco. I feel like the general force that attracts students from these areas of the world is the affordability of post-secondary education here. Getting a European quality standard of education at a price that is lower than elsewhere on the continent. It might also be due to less competition for spots at Lithuania's various universities. One last reason is that it might be seen as a gateway and stepping stone to living and working in Europe, which for many is the ultimate goal. To a lesser extent, international students coming from within the EU are also attracted by the lower price tag of Lithuanian higher education. However, for them, an equally compelling reason they've chosen this country is that it seems somewhat exotic and undiscovered when compared to other parts of the continent. They're not as likely to want to stick around in Lithuania after their studies, opting instead to go back to their home countries or elsewhere. We've covered most people who want to move away and live in Lithuania long term. But if we move to a darker tone, there's also a massive group of people who moved away to Lithuania from their homeland due to events going on where they came from. Refugees. So I would divide the refugee category into 2 groups, political refugees and refugees of war. Political refugees often come from Belarus and Russia. They've decided that their home countries are too unstable or moving too far in the wrong direction.
Čia iš Baltarusijos, aš prisimenu tos vaizdus, jo, nemaišau aš tikrai prisimenu, bet ar tikrai, čia kai Baltarusiai mėgino tą, sukilimą daryti, aigės, čia ne tie vaizdai? Atrodo, kad tikrai juos mačiau jau. Bet tikrųjų, ir tuos... Galima subtitrus, aigės, bent jau tos automatinius. Tik auto-generated. Bet jo, man atrodo, čia iš Baltarusijos buvo tie vaizdai.
Home countries are too unstable or moving too far in the wrong direction.
Aš atrodo,
Lithuania is the destination that offers more opportunities and has a vaguely similar cultural vibe, while also being very understanding of their struggle.
Over the past months, ever more people have been fleeing the country. They head to neighboring Lithuania, an EU member and southernmost of the three Baltic republics.
From our history, we know how devastating could be invasion and devastate lives of people for many, many generations.
A fellow YouTuber and someone I've collaborated with, Yulia Melashina, fits into this category. But perhaps the highest profile of these is Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who fled Belarus in 2020 after running against authoritarian leader Alexander Lukashenko in presidential elections.
Using to concede defeat, former Belarusian presidential candidate Svetlana Tikhanovskaya is now in neighboring Lithuania, according to the country's foreign minister. The Lithuanian president on Monday expressed doubt about the election results that precipitated her departure.
Spending much of her time in Vilnius, Tikhanovskaya has conducted her opposition activity in exile and was recently tried and sentenced in absentia for 15 years in prison. She was convicted by Belarusian authorities of committing high treason and conspiracy to seize power. Those are examples where I'm aware of the story and some background, but I know that there are many, many more who have come since 2020 and 2021. The other category of refugees are those fleeing war. The war in Ukraine, to be more specific. Obviously, these are Ukrainians, and are more often women and children, or teenagers. This is due to the fact that martial law was imposed in Ukraine due to the Russian invasion, and because of this, men aged 18 to 60 have no right to leave Ukraine since they may be chosen to fight in defense of the country. There are some exceptions for men who are within the target age range, and these include having 3 or more children, men with disabilities or poor health conditions, etc.
It took a while to get them here, but the children made it out safely and can play or rest for a bit. They made a 1,600-kilometer journey to reach safety in Lithuania. Orphans get hot food and a roof over their heads. People here in Lithuania are giving what they can to help.
All the Lithuania now experiencing tsunami of goodwill and support for Ukraine.
Finally, I guess we can also touch on the topic of economic migrants. Those who didn't come in the name of love or education and simply ended up in Lithuania due to a job opportunity or even a job posting. Of course, this category is extremely broad and quite diverse. This could be those who have a certain skill or qualification that Lithuanian migration sees as an asset. For many of the categories I listed in this video, many foreigners will end up taking low-skilled jobs to pay the bills.
Jo, aš dar galvoju, nebūtinai, kai kurie šiaip, iš draugų visai turiu pažįstamų, kur jo atvarė tą tech sektorių, bet netgi ten galvoju, kad yra ir logistika, kur dirba, kur nacionalinės, tarptautinės, kaip čia kompanijos, kur jie, čia būsnė turi ir panašiai. Mano draugė Turkija, su logistika dirba grinai, bet tada jo galvoju, ten tuos Volte pristatytojus, ten tuos Bolto darbuotojus labai daug tų būna.
Time job or an activity that brings in money while they complete their studies. The most common of these are Bolt drivers and food delivery workers. Funny enough, I often had mild anxiety around having food delivered because of the fear there would be some issue that would require communication in Lithuanian. Lithuanian anyways. This in itself has been a point of contention that is being debated by the government as they consider imposing language requirements for all freelance workers. But I'll leave that topic for another video. But to wrap things up, I will say that I might get some of these slightly wrong, especially the ones I'm not as well connected with. But I'm sharing my own experience as a Vilnius resident who has already met quite a few foreigners. I know that many of these stereotypes also exist in other countries, but I also think that there are stereotypes that are less common here, but are more common elsewhere. For example, a lot of Western foreigners in Japan and South Korea are there as English teachers, while so many foreigners hopping around Southeast Asia are digital nomads. I definitely think Lithuania is lacking in these two stereotypes and categories. But if your experience has been a little different, or you just think I'm way off with my assessment of Lithuania, do let me know in the comment section.
Jaučiu visai reasonable apibūdino tos, ką komentaruose rašo. Čia neaišku apie ką rašo. Labas, I'm one of the international students in Vilnius from Turkey. I watched most of your videos before coming. They were very helpful for me. For some, Lithuania is a gateway to EU. I know one YouTuber who moved to Lithuania and now is in Germany. Oh, wow, okay, įrodo visiškai teoriją. Ne, aišku, tipo, kai kurie atvaro kaip gateway į Europą. There are two kinds of migrants, legal and illegal. Okay, supratau.
Koks vakaras ilgas, kaip širdį man gelia. Nuskink man jazminą, baltoji